What's going on, my fellow rock and rollers? Now, I've covered a lot of alternative rock bands on my channel, most notably the Big Four out of Seattle, but today I want to dive a bit deeper and talk about a band who didn't get as much attention. Now, I'm talking about the band Gruntruck. Now, their story begins with singer and guitarist Ben McMillan, who originally started playing with another highly influential Seattle band named Skinyard. And while Skinyard didn't achieve the notoriety of the Big Four, they were highly influential in and around Seattle and featured future Soundgarden and Pearl Jam drummer Matt Cameron. Now, Skinyard also featured another important person who was hugely influential in the Seattle sound, and that was producer Jack Endino. Endino most notably worked with Nirvana and the Smashing Pumpkins. Now, most people are probably familiar with Skinyard from the fact that they contributed 2 songs to the Deep Six compilation and introduced a lot of people to the so-called Seattle sound. Now, during his time in Skinyard, McMillan enlisted his bandmate Skinyard drummer Norman Scott, as well as guitarist Tom Nemeyer and bassist Tim Paul to form a side project named Gruntruck in 1989. And the band's influences saw them borrow the punk rock and metal sound that influenced so many of their peers, often being compared to Alice in Chains and Soundgarden. And by the early 90s, Skinyard soon disbanded and Gruntruck became a full-time project for its members. Now, the band released their full-length debut record in 1990 through local label Empty Records, and former Skinyard member and producer Jack Endino shared producing duties with Gary King, and the single Not a Lot to Save would actually get some airplay on MTV, further boosting the band's profile. But it would be the band's connection to other Seattle bands that also got them noticed. The band soon found themselves opening for Pearl Jam the same night the band filmed the video for Alive, and as Nirvana and Pearl Jam found themselves thrust into the national spotlight following the success of their monumental albums Nevermind and 10, the media and record labels would descend on Seattle looking to sign the next big band. And one of those bands that would be swooped up in the frenzy was Gruntruck, who signed to metal label Roadrunner Records, who had a roster including Sepultura and King Diamond. Now, the band would sign a 7-album deal with the label, and following the signing with Roadrunner, the label would re-release the group's debut record, Inside Yours. Now, the group's proper follow-up would be released the following year in 1992 and was titled Push, with Endino and King producing the album once again. Now, the album got a warm reception from MTV, which heavily promoted the band's single Tribe on their hugely popular Headbangers Ball show. And it was also during this time that the band opened for Alice in Chains alongside the Screaming Trees for the band's Dirt Tour. Now, there was a lot of debauchery on that tour between the members of Alice in Chains and Gruntruck, so much so that Matt Vaughn, Gruntruck's manager, left the tour over his disgust over what was going on. He would tell author Mark Yarm in the book Everybody Loves Our Town, there was a lot of violence among Gruntruck, and there was a lot of hostility and maybe bitterness in that they wanted more than they were getting as a band. Gruntruck went from being beer-drinking guys to drug addicts. I don't know that for sure, but they came back different from that tour. Now, it was also during that time that the members of Alice in Chains' entourage started to notice that singer Ben McMillan would change his appearance to look more like Lane Staley. It was kind of ironic given that McMillan was one of the pioneers of the grunge movement, and he was mimicking someone who, in comparison, was a newbie. Now, Gruntruck bassist Tim Paul would also recall how the tour would change McMillan's personality, recalling in the same book, "After we got back, Ben was not the same Ben from the early days. He was not a working out 6 times a week guy with all the musical gear, making everything happen. We used to tease Ben that he was slowly turning into Jim Morrison." Now, the band was supposed to join Alice in Chains on tour in Europe in 1993, but the rumor was that Lane was getting freaked out by McMillan's behavior and didn't want the band to tour with him. So instead, Gruntruck would open for Pantera in 1993 as part of their Vulgar Display of Power tour. But it wasn't the same bond that they shared with Alice in Chains. According to Gruntruck's drummer, Pantera made it be known that they're definitely the headliners, where Alice in Chains' attitude was, "You guys are equal." Following some more grueling tours, the band lost 2 members, and by 1996 the band was in dire financial trouble. Now, like a lot of bands in the music industry, Gruntruck had a fair bit of success, but they weren't seeing any money coming their way. It was at that point in time that the band decided they needed to sever their relationship with their label. And a popular tactic during this time was for bands to declare bankruptcy to get out of their recording contract. And on the advice of their attorney, the band declared bankruptcy, a move that was trying to be blocked by Roadrunner Records. It would result in a landmark lawsuit in which the band would be released from their contract, but it would also result in a legal battle that destroyed the band's momentum and drained their financial resources. And they would end up releasing a new EP in 1996 through Betty Records following the litigation. Now, in 1997, the original lineup would reunite to play local shows and set their sights on recording their 3rd full-length studio record. The band once again hooked up with Jack Endino, and they would spend several years on the album until it was eventually shelved, while singer Ben McMillan would deal with health issues. And in 2008, tragedy would strike when McMillan would suddenly pass away at the age of 42 due to his long battle with diabetes. His former bandmate and producer Jack Endino would release a statement on his website upon hearing the news, claiming Ben was not so lucky. He would say a lifetime of alcohol and other chemical abuse did not help. A fluke internal blood clot almost killed him several years ago. Hospitalized, he was critical care for a month, totally on life support, the whole deal. I remember seeing him there in a coma, body bloated and unrecognizable, breathing only on a ventilator. The fact that he survived was a miracle. I was in touch with him sometimes, but he was not easy to be close to in his final years. You could call him for weeks at a time, every day, and never get an answer. And he never had a cell phone or voicemail or even a message machine. Never used a computer until just a few months ago. There's no way to leave him a message. Then he would call me from out of the blue with the same plans he'd been telling me about since Skinyard broke up in 1992. He wanted to do some recording with me, have me help him with some solo stuff he was working on. He was always not quite ready yet. Ben was like that, long on plans, short on execution, a dreamer who was never very good at interacting with the real world. Now his bandmates, for their part, would release their long-awaited third studio record in 2017, titled Barfly through Found Records, and the surviving members would reunite to pay tribute to the singer the same year. So that does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. If you guys have suggestions for future topics, let me know in the comment section below. Take care.